All right. Anybody at home that wants to participate in this meeting, you can go to the Zoom platform, and the information is on tonight's agenda. So anybody out there wants to get all of us, it's a way to do it. Adoption of the agenda.
What's that?
I want to remove Article 12 for now.
12.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, start with me.
Other than that, I have nothing.
Nothing.
Public comment? Nobody? Select board announcements?
Nope.
It is heating season for those people out there.
Yes.
Just a reminder. Then, what is the date? Is it the 8th?
Oh, that
Of
Cooks is
Harps.
having the fundraiser.
Yeah.
It's Saturday, I believe, December 8th.
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Oh, good.
Is that the right date?
I have nothing else.
Nothing.
Good. Town administrators report.
It might be the 7th. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to bring up a couple of items tonight for the board's information and for the public as well. The town is advertising for a recreation director and community services coordinator. We're already receiving some applications, and I'm putting together our interview team. It will consist of myself, Kayla Matthews from the Recreation Department, and then I'd like to ask one member of the board, preferably the Select Board liaison to the Recreation Committee. So if Selectwoman Covey would be interested in doing that, we'd like to have you join us.
I'd be happy to.
Great. So it looks like we'll be starting interviews around the first week of December. So that's our plan. Thank you. And secondly, I just wanted to let you all know that the town has had a preliminary conversation with our congressional delegation about the issue that the Select Board raised in a letter to the congressional delegation about this limitation to fishing shacks or fish houses on wharfs. In our floodplain management ordinance, they're limited to 200 square feet. And there's a concern that we have many fish houses that are larger than that. And if they're, destroyed in some type of storm, it would be difficult to rebuild them if they're more than 200 square feet. There's a provision in the floodplain ordinance that allows for a variance, but it's difficult to get the variance. It's practically impossible. So we're working with them on setting up a meeting that includes FEMA and our state floodplain management coordinator as well. That meeting has not yet been set up, but I'll let you know when that happens. This was really just a preliminary discussion trying to better inform the congressional delegation about what the issue was as we try to work on how to fix it and resolve it. But it's going to take some time and some work. So that's the latest on that front. Thank you.
Years of government.
Thank you.
Yep. Good there. Consent agenda.
Move we approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes and authorization of the warrants.
Second.
No discussion. All in favor? All right. We have a wharf application here. William and Kathleen Briscoe.
Tim Clark, Codes Office. We had a site visit at tax map 62, lot 142, 5 Sailors Way. No other abutters were there to say any disapproval. There's no fishing or clamming in that area. The wharf may seem a little long, but it's no longer than anything else right next to it. Didn't see any reasons why it should not be approved.
Yeah, I'm all right with it.
Yep, me either.
Okay.
You good? All right. Then I move to approve the application as the harbor master indicates. There's no hazard to navigation, no injury to the rights of others in relation to fishing, fouling, or navigating.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Ben.
Boy.
Potts Point Dock Work Scope and use of resiliency funds.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Plummer, Town's Harbor Master. before you again tonight, follow up to the Pottstown dock, which everyone's aware was destroyed in the January 2024 storms. We are asking, staff is asking to sole source with Flycatcher, who, if anyone's familiar, it's Tim Forrester, who does a lot of work around Harpswell. We did confirm with FEMA that although Tim's not an engineer, he is a qualified person, and FEMA would recognize that. So Flycatcher and Tim Forrester provided this scope of work, and we provided this scope of work to the Resiliency Sustainability Committee. They have tentatively supported up to $10,000 for design to be used from that fund. You'll see in the proposal that phase one of the proposal is to design the dock to what it was, because FEMA wants to see both. They want to see what was there on paper, and they also want to see what would go above and beyond. So up to $6,000 to show what was there, and then another $4,000, up to $4,000 to show the mitigation. And that would be a total of $10,000. So staff is asking the board to sole source with Flycatcher and to use the Resiliency Sustainability Fund not to exceed $10,000.
Well, beyond that, though, there's phase 3, which goes into the permitting process.
So that is
between-
something that needs to be discussed once we get to the permitting, I mean, to the,
One step at a time.
yeah, right.
All right, I move that we contract with them for no more than $10,000 for phase 1 and 2.
Second.
Now, the original drawings for that, they should be here, correct?
They probably are. I'm not aware, but
Would that maybe stop?
Save a little money.
they might.
If we had, they got to be on file that the guy that built it just left.
Yep.
Well, I think young Bob Waddle did some work on it a few years ago.
No, I'm talking about the initial drawings.
Of
when
the
they-
initial?
When they came to get
Yeah.
their permit. I would think the drawings would be here. You remember who designed it?
No, that was before my time. It's been there quite some time.
time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But maybe the code office has some previous permitting applications
We-
when we
we-
did some work.
we could agree to it right now, then if they happen to come up with the drawings that, see if that works.
Absolutely, and Tim made it clear, this is up to $10,000. He's not going to charge the town any more than, so if it's less work on his end, I'm sure we'll see that reflected in the bill.
All right. All in favor?
Thanks.
All right. Committee updates, conservation?
Thank you.
Oh, where you going?
You're welcome.
Apparently, I'm going by myself.
Oh,
He's going to go watch
the
the,
meeting's not over,
wants to stay for the fun.
I think,
Yeah.
Chairman, I think you missed
Oh, the boat
number
launch.
8.
That's right.
Biggie, the
I
biggie.
get excited. Bet you feel boat launch, next steps in contract with Plan Me.
Mark's next door. Did we want to talk to him?
He's
right
right here.
here.
Oh, there he is. He's hiding in the audience. And Mark has a stiff neck tonight. so-
Place, Okay. I'm Mark Ironman. I guess my designation now is planning consultant to the town. Following the vote at the special town meeting, I contacted Dan Bannon at GEI because Christie said, let's meet with the select board and make sure we're all on board for the plan of moving forward. I also informed the Maine Department of Transportation that the warrant article had passed. I have not sent them Dan's proposed work plan until you had an opportunity to discuss it tonight. I gave you Dan's outline of how he envisions the project moving forward. You'll notice in here two things. One, there are sort of circular review processes where they would complete the engineering design, the bid documents, the specifications, and both the town and Maine Department of Transportation would review it. They would then go back and make any changes that are necessary. In the past, we've had to do some changes to make sure everything was up to date because everything has to meet the state standards and refer to the right sections, et cetera. The goal would be to get Maine Department of Transportation's approval to go to bid in spring, to advertise, do the bidding, be in a position to award the contract by summer, but to sort of, if you will, drag our feet a little bit because the Army Corps of Engineers has a window in which in the water work can be done so you don't disturb the people, the things that are in the substrate and what have you, with the idea that construction would start in the fall next year, go through the winter, and be completed by the spring of 2026. That's the proposal. Christie, do you want to talk about Matt Nixon's concern?
We have a tenant at the building in the Marine Business District, Mary Meeting Shellfish, and the tenant was aware from the beginning that the town had plans potentially to put a boat launch in. And I think the tenant's concerned that some of the disturbance that would occur as a result of the construction work may cause some issues. But, you know, I'm not sure that we can alleviate all of those concerns, but I think there may be some additional mitigation ideas that Dan Bannon has from GEI that might, you know, keep the disturbance to a minimum.
There are two things that concern me. One is the availability of the contractors after all of the wreckage we've had on the coast, and the other is the bids prices keep going up. I don't want to have to go to town again and ask for more money, so I don't know how much we can drag our feet on this.
Well, it really, when I say drag our feet, it really comes down to the in-the-water
Right, no,
portion of the project.
I
The
understand,
idea
but it-
would be that the project would go to bid and a contract would be entered into next summer.
With the dates that are,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
That would allow construction of the upland work to start, but the in-the-water work, the piles related to the
Okay,
launch floats and those sort of things couldn't occur until that window that the Army Corps imposes on our permit.
Right.
Questions, thoughts?
Looks fine.
Go to move forward and tell Dan to work like mad and get it done and ready to go?
yes.
Yes.
And I think the other piece is that we would like to recommend hiring Plan Me, which is Mark Ironman's company.
This is what I'm getting at here.
And Mark would essentially be the project coordinator. Is that the title you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I should be the person that approves things. You know, in the past projects, my role has been to sort of keep the town and the engineer and Maine Department of Transportation and the contractor all doing the same thing and submitting the reports and making sure that if we need change orders, we get those done and approved and all of that sort of thing.
Well, I move that we approve this sub-agreement with Plan Me and approve of the scope of work and the terms of the sub-agreement.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Right?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Now, committee updates, Conservation, Marine Resources, and Harbor and Waterfront. You're up first, Mary Ann.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ann Nave, and I'm here tonight with Nancy West and Ann Caldwell to report on both the Conservation Commission and the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee. I think we'll start with the Resiliency and Sustainability first. And I think what I'd like to do is kind of just do a little background for the folks at home who might not be that aware of the committee because it's rather new. And kind of start with what we're actually there for, which is to help the town reach carbon neutrality and mitigate the effects of sea level rise. And through that, we wanted also, through community outreach, let the residents and our neighbors know, as well as there are areas that we can be helpful in educating with information the town's people to take advantage of the number of grants and discounts that are available if you're trying to upgrade your electricity and fossil fuel usage. So just to begin, on the area that I thought I would talk about is letting you know how we've progressed over the last 3 years. And it's a bit of a review, but we helped by using the Climate Action Plan and working with the town to become a partner in the Community Action Plan. It's a 2-year partnership that the town signed on in 2022. It expired this year, and we were asked to resubmit, which we did, and bring them up to date with what we had accomplished along with the plan and what we hope to do in the future, which the select board approved, and we submitted, and we have been accepted. This puts us in a position to apply for the Governor's Office of, I always get this wrong, Governor's Office of Planning, Innovation in the Future, known as GOPIF. They offer approximately $50,000, the latest one is $75,000, in planning grants to help towns prepare for some of the mitigation. And how has that helped our town? Well, we began the partnership, and the first year we were able to do the town LED project, and we, with the grant money from that, were able to pay for the actual parts and things to do the project, of which the town has been getting the advantage of lower electricity for the last a little over a year. And part of that was also to do a level 2 energy audit of the town building, which has been done and I believe is in the process now of moving forward to see what has to be done to winterize the building better. And then the next thing came up was an engineering assessment on Abner Point Road and Bethel Point Road. That project is going to wrap up the end of this year. And in fact, on December 9th, we're going to have a public meeting for the engineers to go over the draft plan. Postcards went out to all the members in those neighborhoods this week, and at which point they will take input from the residents in the area and write up the final plan to submit to the selectmen for approval. Prior to that, the last 2 public roads that are going to be affected by 1 to 2 feet of sea level rise, Lowell's Cove Road and Dingley Island Road, received a grant this past spring, and it is in process to be completed by next spring. At which point, we're going to have completed assessments of the 5 most vulnerable roads in town, so that the select board and the town will have data to use when they're planning road improvements. And how are we able to have this happen so quickly? And I have to talk about SPIRA, which is the Sustainability Plan Implementation Reserve Account. In 2023, the townspeople approved that, which allows us to have match money readily available as the grants come up. SPIRA money was used in all of those grants, and it allowed us to meet the due date that they were due without having a town meeting. Just as an aside, the select board is able to approve up to $50,000, I believe. Anything over that, if it were to be more, would go to a town meeting. So moving on, another high priority for the committee is to work on the Community Energy Resource Program. And this is directly helpful to the townspeople. And Nancy West, you're going to come up here and talk about that piece.
She can't wait.
Right now.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Nancy West, and I'm on the Conservation Commission, and I'm on the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee. And Mary Ann neglected to say that Mose Price is going to, I think, be speaking, is also on the Resiliency Committee. So the Resiliency Committee draws from the other town committees, and also, I believe, from HA, because Jay McCrate is on it.
Yes.
Okay. And what Mary Ann just said isn't exactly what I thought I was going to be talking about, so you're going to have to help me if I ignore what you think I should be talking about. One of the components of your charge and the state's expectations is that we conduct outreach to the community. And we've been doing that all along, and this is sort of in 2 phases. There's the original 2022 Community Action Plan, and then the new one that you just approved in September. There's a pretty clear charge that the Resiliency Committee, as part of its partnership with the state, to conduct an outreach with the community. And so we have constructed some guidelines for how to do that. I'll just put it behind here. And among other things are that when the town makes improvements, we will make an effort to translate those improvements so that residents of Harpswell can do a similar kind of thing in their own house. So for instance, when the town put in the LED lights, we wrote articles for the Anchor so that people would know the benefits of LED lights as opposed to, say, the old-fashioned, big screw-in incandescent lights. And then there was a second article, also in the Anchor, about how they could get funding from the state in order to be able to do those kinds of things. So the principle is, if the town does something, is there a way that we can translate that so that people can implement similar changes in their own home? Mary Ann has talked about energy, but the Conservation Commission has also been concerned about the impact of climate change, say, on water in Harpswell. If there is a prolonged drought, for instance, then what can the town do to minimize its use, and what can townspeople do to minimize their use? So the Conservation Commission has gone down the route of conserving water, and we've conducted a number of programs about that. Okay, so back to the principles. In any kind of outreach that we do, we want to steer people towards Efficiency Maine, which is a state program, which is very clear about what they can do, what the state can do, and how people can tap into the resources of the state. So we will always try to funnel people towards Efficiency Maine. We intend to use direct, plain language as opposed to language that bureaucrats might use, for instance, or engineers or scientists or something. And we intend to make the information accessible so that people are not always steered immediately to websites, but they might actually be steered to a normal person with a telephone so that they can have a conversation over the phone or face-to-face. So using those guidelines in the first phase of this, the first 2 years of this, We've had 8 articles related to these kinds of things in the Anchor. We've had articles in the Bulletin. We've made public presentations with respect to groundwater and wells, 3 in 2023 and 2 so far this year. We've distributed materials at the non-residents taxpayers meeting, at the town meeting, and also to put in a plug for my part of town, the Cundy's Harbor Days, lobster crate races, and blindfolded dinghy races. We've had a presence there with handouts for people to take. So we have already had an impact, and will continue to have an impact. I have some show and tell here, articles in the Anchor, articles in the town bulletin. Christy, this is for you. And the charge has been it's part of the next 2 years of the work plan as well. But that we've had something of a change, and I think an improvement. There's now a working group from the Conservation Commission and also another member of the, there's now a working group from the Resiliency Committee with a member of the Conservation Committee to join us. We've only had one meeting, so this is in its infancy. The meeting happened to be right after the terrible storms in western North Carolina. And those following upon terrible storms in Vermont and Connecticut and the storms that we had last winter have made us think about 2 different time frames. One is in the aftermath of an emergency, what kinds of things can the sustainability, resiliency and sustainability, what kinds of things can we propose in order to be able to work with the town, particularly emergency management services, in order to make the town resilient? One of the lines that came out of Western North Carolina was neighbors as lifelines, and that struck a chord with all of us. So how can we build on that idea? How can we build on the sense of community that's so strong here in Harpswell in order to make sure that everyone is taken care of in the aftermath of one of these climate emergencies, weather emergencies, which will be more severe because of climate change? How do we communicate? Ironically, one of the ways that was effective in North Carolina was to use AM radio and to use shortwave radio, where people would say things on the AM radio and would be able to communicate back to the radio stations using shortwave radio. So it could be that we end up proposing that the town go back to like 1980s communication technology, if that is a viable means of working. Again, those are kind of emergency things, and I want to emphasize, we've had one meeting, we're having another one tomorrow at 11 o'clock, so this may all change. We want to promote what the town is already doing, say, using the Code Red accounts. We think that maybe using the road associations would be a good way to get the word out, and the Conservation Commission knows how difficult it is to find out where all the road associations are and who the contact person is. But those are sort of very local regions within town, and if we can reach the road association president, then maybe we can reach everybody on that road. So there's emergency preparedness there, and then there's the long-term sustainability piece. Not we've got a problem here, but how can we prevent a problem in the future? And that needs to be built upon. We will shamelessly borrow from other towns. So Brunswick, for instance, has a sustainability cafe. We have a repair cafe already in Harpswell. Can we build a sustainability cafe on that, where people could meet face-to-face with those of us in the sustainability or the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee or the Conservation Commission? Can we meet so that we can guide them to state resources on Efficiency Maine? If there's a repair cafe, could we have a table and be the sustainability cafe? And could we also have a preparation cafe to guide people to how they can be prepared for a weather or some other kind of, I would say, a fire crisis? So these are all things we're toying with. We intend to form coalitions with among the Resiliency Committee, Conservation Commission, HHLT, Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, the Santa Fund, Willing Helpers, HA, maybe Brunswick, maybe Phippsburg. How can we all work together and build on the connections that we have? And how can we build on other people's wisdom? There are a number of components of things that came out of the first meeting. Well, who knows what's going to come next meeting? But on the action items are to summarize our objectives in a concise paragraph if this meeting were next week, I would be able to give you a concise paragraph, but I can't do that. So we've publicized in local news sources, and we have some standards by which we will continue to do our work. Those are the guidelines that we came up with. And we have a working group which is pretty excited and concerned, but also delighted to be working with people who live in Harpswell because we have such a strong sense of community. Questions? Thank you. Is that what you wanted me to talk about?
You did fine. You helped me on the Conservation Commission here.
That was
Overlap.
Going back to the Conservation Commission, which Nancy really stole a lot of my thunder, but it's okay. We started in 2022 during the end of the last drought. We're in another one now. As people began to talk more about not having enough drinking water and how to keep water on our land and do a better job for our drinking water wells. The group on the Conservation Commission named ourselves the Water Witches, and we started having programs, a few programs in 2022 at the local library and the yacht club, the small little groups in town over at the Grange, talking about conserving, the best way to look at your environment around you and what to do on your property to help conserve water. This past summer, with Kevin started the ball rolling on this one, as part of being on the comprehensive plan task force, we realized how drinking water and wells was such a large part of what the community was concerned about. So we had contacted the state hydrologist, Jessica Meeks. She held a program in Harpswell the 1st of September. We had over 130 people there and almost 99 on Zoom. Very, very well received. And she gave a really good explanation of what is a fractured rock aquifer and what it means to live on top of one. I think that was very helpful to many of the community, and it was a good start to then have a second program, which we had the end of October, and that focused on harvesting and conserving. And for those, it was a fun meeting because we did a tag team, and we focused on conserving. So we started talking about leaks, and we had a very interesting conversation on toilet leaks, and everybody got really, really involved in it. It's on the town website if you wish to watch it. Craig, I forget his last name, at the Anchor, did a really, I mean, actually, if you read his article, it pretty much is the whole program that we gave, and you get a really good sense of the interchange with the folks. That has resulted in, I'm still getting people trying to contact us, talking about what they would like to do to help conserve water. We talked about a third program in the spring, and this may be more than one, that's going to focus on harvesting water. We all know about rain barrels. Well, we've learned that there's a lot of cisterns in town, which is pretty cool, I think. And that program is going to talk more about how you can use your property to keep the precipitation that falls, whether it's snow or rain, on your property longer, so that it has time to soak in and not run off. I mean, just as an aside, we heard the beginning of June that we had reached the normal annual rainfall in June. And here we are now, 3 months later or 4 months later, and we're in a drought. Mm-hmm. So I think it tells us that things are changing. It's even more important for us to figure ways to conserve the water as it comes down so that you have it to use when when you need it later. So that's just a bit of a preview of what we have to come. But that's kind of what the Conservation Commission has been focusing on for the last 2 years, as well as being the conduit to the Resiliency Committee as they look at the vulnerable roads in town. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great work.
Ask a question?
Up there.
Sure.
Should I stay or go?
No, it's for you. Mike Dana from Potts Point. My question is, in the resiliency part of your work, what's being discussed, or if anything, about the causeway to Potts Point? Mo's brought it up with the town line, 123 at the town line, and even the Basin Point Road, which was overtopped in January. Is there any discussions on that going forward with, and I know you talk about the town, but is the state aware of what's happening with those particular areas, and the fact that they haven't done anything with the causeway, basically, to repair the damage from last year is kind of concerning also.
Thank you for your question. Well, I'm going to go back to square one. When we talk about the town spending money, it has to be on town property. But we do have a role that we can play going forward to be advocates for the town to the state. And I would see the Resiliency Committee being more of that, playing that type of role on the, especially on 123, along with the town. I know there has been talk probably with Maine DOT. I know Mark Ironman, when he was here, had talked with DOT about changes to Route 123. So I would say going forward, that would be the role that we would play. I can also mention that just today, the state came out with its new focus for the Maine Won't Wait plan, and they're focusing more on storm resilience and also the working waterfront. So I see that as an area that going forward that the committee can redirect some of its thinking and include it in some of our priorities going forward. I hope that's helpful.
It is. No, Basin Point Road is, what's the thoughts on that?
That's very interesting. Basin Point Road was the first road that we got a grant through the Maine Coastal Program to do the first study, similar to what we're doing on the other roads. And so we have complete plans and estimates of what needs to be done. The interesting point was when Basin Point Road came up for repaving, this was very fortunate, I think, that we had that plan, because it allowed us to know what the cost was going to be to just handle that portion of Basin Point Road, and whether, if doing it now was cost-effective because of the length of time a road lasts until the next time it needs. And had we not had that study, I don't know how we would have handled it. We probably wouldn't have handled it any different. But it gave us, I think, hard data to look at when we were making the decision. Because I know the conversation came up when we were talking about it. So that's the question on Basin Point Road. I think it would have doubled the project at that time, and there wasn't funding put aside for it.
It was $750,000 to go a very short distance.
Exactly. It was
Yeah.
very short. It was less like
Yeah.
2,000 feet, if that, or something like that.
And that was pre-COVID.
Right, exactly. So it wasn't, I mean, these all come to play, I think, when you're making your decisions on making improvements.
And-
more expensive now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, a paving job lasts 7 years, well, more than that. They say 7 years, but, you know, we took a chance that it's gonna be good for the next 7 years, and, you know, it went over in January, but the minimal damage.
Yeah.
So-
And something also to mention is Resiliency Committee is starting to look forward of what to look for to help the town have a fund in place perhaps, or how the town can look at preparing for the large sums that are going to be needed, which would be, I'm trying to figure out how to say this because it's a decision of the select board at all time, how the money is spent. But we want to start thinking about ways that might be considered and push that through to the select board.
I will say, every committee we have wants a fund in place.
I know.
We have a lot of committees, by the way.
I know, it came up at the last Resiliency Committee. Because, you know, the Resiliency Committee is made up from members of all the committees in
Oh, yeah.
town.
And you, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that's the type of thinking I think we have to, long-term thinking, and figure out the best way, because the town actually, it's not up to us to figure out how you're going to do it, exactly, the method, but we can be, I think, helpful in suggesting of ways to plan for it.
If I could just add a little bit more to the roads. We have a multi-year capital road plan, and that is, in my understanding, has been used primarily to repair and restore roads over the time of their degradation. And what we're looking for now is how do we build in the modifications that are going to be made given the sea level rise and the storm surges. And that's a part of planning that I think is going to go forward beginning relatively soon.
Because we also have, as part of projects that we work on, we have a prioritization plan based on particular information on that road and the usability, how much, and what is needed. So that is something that I think whenever you're trying to plan for something like this, you have to have some sort of a prioritization schedule that you're working to keep it fact-based. No. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Marine Resources and Harbor and Waterfront. Who wants to go first? Oh, yours, David.
Evening. Dave Wilson, Chair on Marine Resource Committee. This year, most of our conservation activities consisted of helping the marine deputies from Cumberland County survey, I believe, almost all the grow areas in Harpswell. Late August, we had a large cove on the western side of town. Spruce Cove was reclassified in open status. That was definitely a plus. And we had quite a bit of shoreline cleanup this year. Again, the Landowner Appreciation Day event, I felt went awesome. I don't think we had as many attendees, but everybody that showed up had a great time. And I don't know, next year, I don't want to speak for the rest of the committee, but I feel that they feel the same way, that we would like to just continue enhancing our shell stock and preserving access and strengthening, public relations with the residents here in Harpswell.
Dave, what's the green crab situation? I mean, you guys have tried to trap them, you've tried to cover the flats with screens to keep them away from the clams. I mean, what's the situation at this point?
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of trapping from the harvesters this year that I know of. I think there might be one or two that's actually trapping. But yeah, they're still out there in very high numbers. So Quahog Bay opens on the 1st of next month, so that'll give us a view of just what's going on there. But I think that's where most of our green crabs are right now. I've been harvesting in Long Cove for these past month and a half, day and night, and I don't see hardly any green crabs in that cove. I think it's really site specific. So
If you could put an order in for a couple of good cold winters, maybe that
Yeah.
would help.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm hoping. So,
Is Snow Island still trapping green crab?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I mean, I haven't talked a lot with the committee about it, but, I paid another visit last month down to, the Bowdoin College Coastal, the wet lab. I don't know if you guys have been down there, but it's awfully nice what they got going, and I'm hoping that we can, maybe partner up with them next year and see if they might be able to help us. So they've asked a couple times if, any way at all, they'd love to help.
They probably love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
A real
Great.
project, they'd love it.
Oh, yeah.
In lieu of taxes.
Yeah, was anything?
Oh, my mic is hot.
No? Yeah, all right.
Wonderful.
Any questions? No?
No.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
David.
you.
Thanks for what you do anyway.
Yeah, no problem.
Good evening. Mose Price, I'm Vice Chair of the Harbor Waterfront Committee, and I gave you guys a handout of general recap of what we have been doing for the last year and what we're currently working on also, but I'm not going to read through it. I'm just going to talk about it. We also talked about a reserve fund establishment, focusing initially on getting property that could be converted either by purchase or lease or whatever to provide more parking at town landings, because everybody is aware that's a very scarce commodity. And then we worked with, had a joint meeting with the Town Lands Committee, and we discussed the Land Acquisition Fund, which is probably underfunded for today's world. And Christie tells me that they're going to increase that funding this year. We have also discussed getting it up to a level where we could make some significant moves if an opportunity arose, and then increasing it gradually every year to replenish what is spent one year and increase it a little bit the next year for inflationary pressure, which we're bound to have happen. We've also talked about enhancing the Marine Hazards Fund to save this poor fellow from having to move whale carcasses with nothing in his pocket to pay for it. And that, of course, is something that cannot be anticipated. I mean, we had the whale, then we had a shark. What's next? And when? So we think that there needs to be more money in that fund, not just for carcasses, but also repair and replace navigational aids that get blown over or torn out by a storm, which has happened now 2 or 3 years in a row. So that's something that we want to see get approved at town meeting at some level to start with, just to improve it. I don't think there's enough money there for Paul to do his job correctly at this point. We've also worked with the residents and the group at Potts Point on the workaround to get the moorings, not the people with access to their moorings after that storm that took out the pier. And apparently that is coming about slowly, probably more slowly than everybody expected it to be, but that's what's happened. And then at the request of the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee, the Harbor Waterfront reviewed the town's sustainability plan, which Mary Ann was talking about revising this year. And one of our members noted that there is an apparent contradiction in the original plan as pertains to water activities. And the contradiction arises from the potential harm that floating offshore wind towers could create for the fishing community. And So Matt Gilley, who brought this up, was invited to come speak to the Resiliency Committee in October and present his points about the harmful effects that could occur and what the effect would be on the fishing community. And it includes the actual way that the turbines produce electricity and then send it to shore to get it converted from DC to AC, and the amount of water that they need to use to keep the cables cool in that process, and then the release of that water back into the water that came from at a much higher temperature. Matt has suggested 130 degrees is what it comes out of the process from. And in addition to that, because they're floating towers, they have a scope because they're anchored to the bottom. And the fishermen are not allowed, or will not be allowed, to go in between them or fish within the scope of the turbines themselves. And that, when you put them all together, contributes a great area of what is currently used as fishing land. So one of our committee members, who's sitting over here tonight, said she took her, at that discussion, took her green blinders off, and that was the purpose, to make the presentation so people realize that all is not honey and kisses with the green energy necessarily in the production of it. There is a downside to it, and it's very concerning, I think, and it doesn't get publicized in the media. So, we also have been had on our agenda for the last couple of years a review of the water classification map, because we're getting so many applications for LPAs, and they all generally say that there's no fishing activity where they want to put their LPA. And some of them wanted to go into the high classification, which was where the most traffic is and the most number of moorings are. And that really is not a satisfactory position, but we couldn't really say, no, you can't do it there because we didn't have the basic knowledge. So the aquacultural group that's been working on this is also doing a mapping of where each of the fishermen, or most of the fishermen at least in town, do actually operate. Because they do move around as whatever they're going after moves, and they may not be there this month, but perhaps next month will be their busy time in that place. So an LPA might not be appropriate there because of the catching up with the gear on the bottom. So I think when they get their map review done, we will probably combine that with the water classification review and look at the map more closely now and see what areas of town we should perhaps strictly rule out for LPAs, and which other areas might be more appropriate as long as it satisfies the needs for the LPA applicant. We've also been working with the harbor master about getting himself an on-the-water office space with boat access. And the first proposal that was considered was down at Lowell Cove, and it just didn't work out for a number of reasons. And there are a lot of issues with it from the code's perspective and public access and that kind of thing. But that's going to be an ongoing project until we can find something that satisfies both the needs for the town and the public and the harbor master. And we're reviewing town policies that affect water-related activities, and we'll make proposed revisions to them for your consideration as the review continues. And we will continue to advise the harbor master at the sense of the committee for LPA and wharf applications, which we already do. Anybody have any questions?
Boy,
Thank
we
you.
haven't left room for a lot of questions.
No?
So it's kind of apropos, Mike Dana, Potts Point. Just before we came to the meeting tonight, I reached out to our neighbor who has the property adjacent to the town wharf on the north side. So it's about, I think, 150 feet by 3, 4, 5, whatever, whatever the depth is. And I had talked to her earlier in the summer and said that the town, may be interested in obtaining that property just because it's adjacent to a town. And I asked her if the town had contacted her and they haven't, and, but
They
she's very,
haven't? She said they haven't?
right.
Because we did send letters to people who own
Well,
property.
Unfortunately, her dad or her parents are afflicted with dementia, so maybe those notices went to them.
Because we used the tax records that we had and sent it to the property
Yeah.
owner, so that's interesting. I'd be
Yeah.
willing to follow up on that.
Okay, well, I'll get you her contact info, and, but she's willing to, or she's really interested in having that property possibly go to the town. And, as denoted in that picture of the town dock, issue for tonight, it kind of encompassed that property, so that's why I reached out to her thinking that maybe she had made a deal, but she hadn't. So, but I didn't say it was, I didn't tell her it was on the picture. But as I said, she's willing to, or she's interested in maybe selling or conveying that property to the town, which I think would be very beneficial, because, you know, it could possibly be more parking such as we have on the south side of the dock. Maybe take a little bit more to build something there, but I think it would be beneficial for the town to have that. Now, also, you mentioned something about the Paul's office. Wasn't there some talk about Cook's upstairs in Cook's Lobster House? Is that still?
Still in the works,
Oh.
discussions.
That's it, thank you.
You got anything else, Paul?
Nope.
You good? All right, I guess we're good with that. Next step regarding Central Emergency Services Building.
Yeah, so I really just wanted to take the opportunity to update the board and the public on that process. The select board signed a contract with Port City Architecture back at the end of April, and it was to work with the town on designing conceptually a central emergency services building. So the Fire and Rescue Planning Committee has been working through that process. We slowed down maybe a little bit in the summer because of people's schedules, but there is a conceptual plan that's been developed. There's been a kind of a methodical process that was followed with the consultant, working with members of the committee who represent the 3 different fire departments that are serving Harpswell. And also staff member Mike Drake, who's the fire administrator that oversees our municipal firefighter program, which supplements the services of the volunteer departments. He's been involved in the process as well, as has the chair of the select board. So we're getting close to the end of that process. The agreement with Port City Architecture has a component where we will receive a written report. It will kind of describe the process, the operational information that it received in order to develop this conceptual design. But I think the committee started getting some feedback, specifically from the Ors Bailey Island Department, about some of their concerns and, you know, had the town done enough due diligence? They were proposing an alternative vision. I think they've recently kind of stepped back from that alternative vision, but they still have concerns that the town may need to do more analysis and study on sort of the rationale for the central station and how it might impact the town's relationship with the 3 independent fire departments. So we did reach out to another consultant who was recommended. He lives in Maine, and he does have a lot of expertise in looking at how communities provide fire and rescue services, and I think he also does some other public safety services. He came to one of the recent fire and rescue planning meetings to listen to kind of all the conversation and the concerns. And Mike Drake and myself, we have had follow-up conversations with this consultant. His name is Neil Courtney. He is in Camden, Maine. And he's putting together a scope of work that will maybe delve in deeper into, you know, how a central station will impact our relationship with the 3 departments and how we can integrate, you know, what we're doing with the 3 departments. So I think that's been a concern that we've heard, and the select board recently received a letter from the president of the OBI board, and I talked to him yesterday, and I told him I basically was just going to explain where we're at in the process. And I told him I wasn't certain that the town would do as extensive a study as what the president of the board was asking the select board to consider. But the staff is working to get this additional work scope pulled together with a cost estimate and a time frame. And I'm hoping, by your next meeting, you might have something to consider. I will share it with all three departments, with our Fire and Rescue Planning Committee. And so that's something I think for further discussion. But I did want to note that the Port City Architecture Agreement does come with a report, but I don't think it's going to address some of these additional issues that have come up during the process. And this would be a way to try to, put in writing maybe more of a review of our current system and how this new central station will kind of integrate with that and with the three departments. So that's kind of where we're at. The next Fire and Rescue Planning Committee is on Monday, December 9th. The consultant from Port City Architecture will be there. Whether he will have his final draft report, I'm not sure, but the current concept is estimated to be about $5.1 million for what's been designed at this point. So I just really wanted to keep the full board in the loop and let you know where we're at. I think the sense that I had from this board was that you would like something taken to the March town meeting, potentially. So we're kind of working toward that timeline, if that's one that you would like us to proceed with. But you don't have to make a decision tonight, but that's kind of what we've been operating under as an assumption.
I don't think we need to go overboard with a consultant, but it would be nice to have some expertise, I guess we would call that. But
It's more of an overview
yeah,
than it is.
yeah,
Spending another several $1,000s on a consultant
please,
didn't seem to make any sense.
right.
We get
You know, I
consulted to
think
death.
this additional consultant would meet or at least have discussions with key stakeholders, and that would be the three departments, town people, select board officials, just trying to maybe develop a report that shows the benefits and possibly some of the drawbacks, because I think some of the issues that have been raised is that, we're not looking at maybe some of the downsides of what this kind of central station, might lead to in terms of the volunteer departments and how they might be impacted by it. I mean, there's positives, but I think that they don't want us to overlook that there could be some drawbacks as well.
Well, of course, I'm jumping into the middle of a process, but my personal belief, and I've been on the fire department for, most of my life. I'm still on the department. I'm sort of a reserve firefighter, I guess. I don't suit up and go into fires anymore, but based on a lot of factors, I know we're having trouble recruiting and retaining young volunteers. That's part of the problem here. But if we started with a smaller station with just 2 bays that we could grow, rather than jump into this $5 million building all at once.
This one is proposed to have three.
Three,
That's the current
yeah.
proposal.
Well, but one of those would be the fly car, an engine and a fly car. I don't know, it's just, certainly I'm looking forward to our consultant.
This is actually downsized
Yeah.
from the initial. We started this 6 years ago.
Yeah, I know
Well,
we've been talking about it a long
The
time.
town voted in 2017
Yeah,
to put up $100,000 to develop a
Yeah.
design and plan for this central building.
well, when we built that fly car building, that was supposed to be expandable, it was supposed to have a south-facing roof.
Oh, well,
we've
we
got
looked
none
at
of
that
that.
site, and we've been told that site,
Yeah.
to try to
Right.
add on to that, is not a
Right.
good site.
We-
So the
yeah.
current proposal is to put this building where the entrance to the recycling and transfer station is, out near Mountain Road, and that we would create a new entrance into the recycling center.
A new
facility.
community drive.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's the tentative plan. So that's the latest update.
One of them was moving your TV station.
I saw that.
I said, I'm not gonna tell David that one.
I saw that. I finally got a look at the plans, a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't seen any of them yet. so.
Oh, yeah? Oh. They're around. All set?
Yes.
All right. We get rid of that one. Bids for community garden water tanks.
So we have one bid.
Oh, it's all his, hers, theirs.
Someone has
For single
offered
sourcing.
to pay the town $250 for those 2 water tanks. It's Bob Eaton of Harpswell.
No. All his.
You like to accept that bid?
Tell him he's got them. I move we accept that.
Okay.
bid.
You have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Oh, great. I'm sure he'll be pleased.
Oh, yeah. Oh, seems like we just did this. Set the annual town meeting date for March 8th, 2025.
It's just hard to believe that's right around the corner.
I thought we did it a week ago.
Did you?
Before you know it.
No.
Oh, okay.
It only seems like a week.
It seems like a week ago.
Right. I move that we set March 8th, 2025 as our annual town meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Right.
That's an early
Thank
one.
you.
It
Yeah,
is.
that is. There's going to be a lot on that warrant. Comprehensive plan, potentially the central
Yeah.
station.
They'll both be floor votes, sure.
What's
Or-
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The floor, yeah,
Yeah.
because otherwise they've got to be ready 60 days in advance to put
Yeah.
on a secret ballot.
Just tell John it's not gonna be a short meeting.
We should have told him, he's here tonight.
He was just here.
Well, for the last 11 years, he and I always have a bet what time the meeting's gonna be over. All right, public comment?
Hello, Christine Donovan Hall. I'm with the Orrs and Bailey Fire Department. I'm a vice president, used to be the president. I just want to kind of voice our concern and reiterate what we said in the letter to the select board. As it relates to what's going to be in the scope of work, I know we're going to have a meeting on December 9th, and I just was a little surprised that we may be going to a warrant article in March without some of the considerations that we brought up. And I'd like to make sure that we're able to bring up what we want to when we have the Fire and Rescue Committee, and really be considerate on what the scope of work is going to be for the person that is going to be doing this work for us. Because the 2008 study that was done was extensive, and a lot of the things that were in there as it relates to response time and other things like that, and also population and population centers, we feel are very important to be considered, as well as staffing and things like that haven't been considered. So I just want to make sure that the Orrs and Bailey Island Fire Department is really given an opportunity to participate in that. That's all I had to say.
Count on it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Other business?
No.
Nothing? In that case, we're adjourned.